Hi friends, my name is Hiram Osmond. I was one of the supervising animators on Frozen, and Olaf was my character. And what I mean by that really is that there were a team of amazing artists that all worked together to really create this character, and I was just fortunate enough to be able to lead that and help kind of define who Olaf is. But today, what I want to do is actually show you how to draw Olaf, which I think would be fun. So if you'd like to, grab some paper and a pencil. You don't need any sophisticated art supplies for this. I'm just using a normal pencil and some paper. And I'll go through kind of step by step how I draw Olaf. And as I do so, I'll even kind of talk a little bit about how Olaf came to be. Just the beginnings of Olaf, and maybe a few fun little things about Olaf that maybe you didn't know. Now, as we do this, just have fun with it. Now, we're not going for perfection. You can practice drawing Olaf later. For now, just have fun and draw. Okay? So let's move our camera to the paper, and we'll get going. Okay. So we got all set up here. The first thing I do when I draw Olaf is I start with the basic shapes of the character. And you'll find that with most characters that you draw, it's really kind of finding those basic shapes to help guide you to the finished product. So with Olaf, he of course has a lot of round shapes, being a snowman. And so we'll start with a circle. And as you draw, keep it light, because as we continue to draw, we'll darken things in and get things looking better. But for now, let's keep it light and kind of just flow with the shapes here. So there's my circle, almost like a little oval circle shape. We're going to start with his head here. And I'm going to use this circle to kind of guide me for how his head, to kind of guide and shape what his head will look like. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. But I'm going to take that circle, the width of that circle, and kind of help me create that kind of bulbous head of his. Okay? So that's kind of how I started off. And from there, I'm going to use this circle again. So we've kind of got this basic shape, that egg-like shape of Olaf, which I love, by the way. Our head of visual development, Bill Schwab, he did the designs for Olaf, and I love the simplicity and that big Olaf, that now very familiar Olaf egg shape head of his. But anyway, so we take that same circle we've drawn, and I'm going to use this top portion of the circle here to kind of help me place the crease from where his mouth is going to be. And from that crease, I'm going to draw Olaf's mouth. Oops. Again, not going for perfection because I just made a little mess up there. But anyway, there's Olaf's mouth, just a little smile, okay? And then from there, I'm going to draw in Olaf's very familiar tooth. And you can see I'm going to use this circle again to kind of guide the placement of that tooth. You see the bottom arc of this circle is kind of where that tooth is going to line up. Okay. Now, a fun little fact about Olaf's tooth, when we were first developing Olaf, we weren't quite sure what material that tooth should have been made of. And for a while there, the tooth was actually made of, it was like a glass, or not glass, but an ice block in his mouth. Which was a fun idea, but ultimately it didn't quite look right. And so we finally decided, no, let's just go all snow. And his tooth became snow. All right, from here, and you can see I'm just kind of making little adjustments, but you can kind of see, oh, look, Olaf's head. We're kind of seeing Olaf appear here. And from there, we've got his mouth, got his tooth, and now I'm going to use this circle one more time to kind of help me guide where I want to place his nose. I'm just going to very lightly just put sort of an oval shape right here. We'll come back to this later, but that's kind of where I want Olaf's nose to be. All right, so from there, I'm going to come up to the top of his head here. You see kind of his head's kind of this little arc up here. I'm going to use that to kind of guide where I want his eyes to begin. And Olaf's got those very cute, very big eyes. And I'm going to start with there and there. Yes. You can kind of fill that in right there. Okay, so we've got the beginnings of Olaf's eyes right there, okay? Again, we start seeing Olaf appear here. Still got a lot more to do, but now we've got his eyes kind of close to where we want them. And then from there, we're gonna stick those cute little brows of his right above those eyes. There he is. Okay, so there's kind of the rough layout of his head. Now I'm going to clean up some things here. You can kind of watch how I do that. And as I do that, I want to talk a little bit about how Olaf began. See, Olaf, at the very beginning of Frozen, we had a few screenings where Olaf, he was a much different character than he ended up being. In the beginning, Olaf, he was a little bit more snarky, a little bit more sarcastic, a little bit louder. We kind of found in those screenings that, you know, there's just something wasn't quite right about that. Wasn't quite right about Olaf being that type of character. And then as the story progressed, as Frozen progressed, the writers, the story department, kept describing Olaf with words like sweet, kind, full of joy, full of wonder, and just full of that unconditional love. And he slowly evolved into this character that really sort of represented what the theme of the movie was really about. And he sort of became this embodiment of love. And I just love that. And when that happened, he became a very different character. And of course, with the addition of Josh Gad's voice, which adds so much to him as a character, he became what he is today. And I love, Olaf, he makes us laugh. He's silly, right? He's a funny little guy. But because of that, because of his wonder and his love, we also can connect with him in a very emotional way. And I think there are not many characters that allow you to do that. Okay, so we got his nose. We got his head here, all worked out. Now, I'm going to open his mouth a bit because Olaf, typically, he's very excited, right? Let's open that mouth. So it's just a few lines you just put down there, opening his mouth. And then I like to kind of fill in that mouth with a little shading there, just a little shadow. Just a smiley guy. Now, one other thing that tends to happen as we make these characters is sometimes these characters wind up looking like us. I've been told that I look like Olaf a little bit, and I feel like that's because we spend so much time kind of staring at ourselves in the mirror, looking at our mouth shapes and to kind of create the mouth shapes for these characters. And I think that probably kind of transfers over a little to the character. Okay, so there he is. There's Olaf. Now from here, we got to get his cute little hair, cute little sticks. And that's another fun thing. We weren't quite sure what to do with his hair at the beginning. I know there were lots of conversations with Olaf. Maybe he should have grass growing off the top of his head or for his brows. And I know we had some silly little discussions like that. But I love where it ended up. Just sticks, right? Just sticks. And I think that's what's so fun about him. He's just so simple. Okay. All right, so there's his head. Let's move on to his body. All right, so Olaf, again, we're going to those basic shapes. We're going to put that circle in there for his upper portion of his body. But as you kind of notice with Olaf, his circles have little kind of squared edges, a little bit. And then his bottom portion here, just make a big circle. And even that bottom portion, it's going to have a little bit of that, kind of those squared edges. Right? And then of course we got to go in and put those cute little buttons, cute little pieces of coal. Now one fun, I like to share this story even though it embarrasses my son, but one fun little thing about Olaf is when we were trying to just, to figure out how he moves, he has a very distinct way that he moves as a character. And as the, again, going back, as that story department was describing Olaf and described him as full of energy and just full of wonder, sort of naive and silly and trusting. The more they talked about him, the more I thought, they're really kind of describing my son, and at the time I had a toddler, my second oldest boy, who really acted, behaved, much like I kind of imagined, Olaf would behave. And so I took some videos of my son. I brought those videos in and I showed them to the animation crew as just sort of reference for how this little guy should behave and move. And there was always sort of a lift and an energy to the way my son would walk and run and play. And so we kind of used that as a reference to kind of define Olaf. So anyway, I always love to kind of share that. All right, so we've got his cute little feet. Let's give him a little ground here to just to stand on. And he's done, right? Well, okay, let's give him some arms, shall we? Now, Olaf, I love this pose because Olaf, again, he's just so joyful, and I always kind of imagine him like, maybe he sees a friend, right? And or a squirrel in the forest. Something very Olaf like that. And he's just like, oh, hi, friend. And these hands, they're just sticks and kind of squarish little fingers. But he's saying, oh, hi, friend, how are you? And then maybe, let's get both those arms up there. You can kind of put these little bending points in his arms. Now that's a fun thing to talk about too. So Olaf, if you notice, and maybe you did notice this, but in the movies, he doesn't bend his arms very much. He usually will keep them fairly straight. Sometimes he does bend them, and that's fine. But most of the time, he keeps them pretty straight. There's actually a reason for that. That was intentional. On the first Frozen, Wayne Unton, one of the other supervisors, had a thought. He's like, what if we kept Olaf's arms straight, almost like a toddler, kind of like a toddler does. When a toddler walks around and moves around, he's not bending his arm, or he or she's not bending his arms too much. It kind of keeps them straight, and you create kind of that sort of that toddler look. And we thought, well, if we keep Olaf's arms straight and kind of play within that limitation, he might feel a little bit more toddler-like. And so we did those tests, and wow, it was right on. And it just feels, it really, really makes him feel sweet and toddler-like. So that was very much intentional. Okay, so there we are. We got Olaf. He's looking good. He's so happy, isn't he? He's like, hi, friend. And then let's top this off with a little orange nose, shall we? Cute little orange nose. All right, friends, so there you have it. Now, all of you who've been following along, very important, you should always sign your name to your work. So I'm going to go down here, sign my name, and call it good. Thank you for following along. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned some things about Olaf. And keep drawing, my friends.